Hi and welcome back to the Anti-Alienation Project. I'm Maddie and on my channel I talk about all things related to alienation. Today I want to talk about one of the alienator's traps, how they make the child reliant on them, basically how they keep the child in this bond, this trauma bond. Now alienators have several traps and the trap we're going to be focusing on today is called parentification. As always, I want to just make a note that I'm not a medical professional, not a doctor, not a therapist, simply someone who was alienated from the child's point of view for 20 years. I figured everything out last year and now I'm speaking out about this form of abuse. A little bit about me is that I'm the oldest child of 5. I'm also the only girl, so I have 4 younger brothers, and I think that I was dealing with parentification probably from the time I could take care of a younger brother, 5, 6 years old, but it really got worse around my parents' divorce. At that time I was 9 years old and the parentification really set in. So what is parentification? Parentification is basically turning the parent and the child on its head. And the child is forced to provide emotional support or practical support for their parent instead of being the one to receive that as a child. In a way, the child becomes the caregiver. The result of parentification is that the child is forced to assume adult responsibilities and adult behaviors before they are ready to do so. As you might be able to imagine, when the responsibilities like this are shifted on its head, this is going to cause a lot of disruptions for the child's own development. The consequences on the child, emotional and physical well-being, cannot be stressed enough. The impacts are far-reaching and last into adulthood, sometimes for an entire lifetime. There are 2 types of parentification: instrumental parentification and emotional parentification. The big difference between these two is that instrumental parentification involves children taking on practical responsibilities, such as cooking, babysitting the younger siblings, cleaning the house, even paying bills, taking care of their parent if they have a physical or mental illness, anything that's practical. Whereas emotional parentification involves a child providing emotional support to a parent. This includes listening to a parent talk about their problems, offering advice to the parent, mediating between a parent and another family member, serving as a confidant for their parent, and providing emotional comfort and support to a parent. In my case, I had a little bit of both instrumental and emotional parentification. Most of the parentification I experienced, however, was emotional parentification, and I do think this is very common for alienated kids. This is not just my own experience. I have spoken with about a dozen other people who've been through this from the child's point of view, and pretty much all of us have dealt with parentification. I've always felt like I was treated like my mom's therapist, just emotional caretaker. I was the person she came to for advice, and I never felt qualified to give that advice. I was the person that she would come to when she was emotional, in tears, or really angry and upset with a friend or a family member or even a stranger, and I was the person to talk her down. And she came to me with her problems. She came to me with everything. As a mother myself, I struggle to understand how a parent can do this and why a parent would do this. I know that a lot of this is generational. I believe that my mom experienced this as well, but she just doesn't see it as dysfunctional. I think it is a learned behavior, but at some point you can unlearn these things, and at some point you can realize what you're doing is having a harmful effect on your child. If you are interested in knowing reasons for parentification, there are several. Parentification is more likely to occur if the parent has a substance use disorder or addiction, if the parent has a serious medical condition or is disabled, if a parent does not have sufficient emotional support from other adults in their lives, if the parent experienced neglect and abuse as a child themselves, or if a parent suffers from mental illness. Also, catastrophes in the life of the family can lead or cause parentification to start. For example, financial hardships, divorce, or a really serious illness of a sibling can cause conditions that may lead to parentification. Is parentification trauma? Parentification can cause what's known as relational trauma. In other words, the bond between the child and parent is broken, is severed, is disrupted. Relational trauma occurs in childhood when the parent starts to rely on their child for emotional support. Parentification has also been proven to cause chronic stress in the child because the child is not receiving the support or protection they need. And it's important to realize that parentification is not only a short-term destruction for the mental and emotional health of the child. There are long-term impacts on the child's life, well-being, self-esteem, personality, the list goes on. There's also a correlation with time and the negative consequences on the child. So the earlier that the parentification starts in the life of the child, the worse outcomes that can be predicted for that child. Let's talk about the dangers of parentification. As you might imagine, one huge danger of parentification is that the child is unable to emotionally regulate themselves. Because they've been so focused on regulating their parents' emotions for years or even decades, they neglect their own emotional well-being. Another danger of parentification is trust and the inability to trust other people. This comes out particularly when alienated children and parentified children start to get older and want to have romantic relationships of their own. Often these children, like myself, have a really difficult time opening up and trusting other people, particularly in their romantic relationships. They don't know the healthy boundaries to have with other people who they're close with in their lives. And because of that, they struggle with getting their own needs met. Parentified children can also suffer with underlying trauma that causes a wide variety of issues as these children try to cope with all of the trauma that they've dealt with. And this can include depression, anxiety, substance use disorder, the list goes on. Parentified teenager or child usually displays symptoms, and these are really destructive. First of all, anxiety. Anxiety about others, anxiety about caring for others, depression. Suicidality, compulsive overworking in order to fulfill responsibilities at home or at school. I still deal with this. It's crazy. I just can't relax. I can't let myself relax. I feel like I always need to be doing something. Feelings of guilt and shame. I know what that's like. I think that the feelings of guilt and shame for parentified children specifically are often a result of putting yourself first and putting your own needs first. Can cause a feeling of guilt and shame, like you don't deserve to do that. Unrelenting worry. Check. Social isolation, I've been there. Physical symptoms of anxiety and depression such as stomach aches, headaches. Yeah. Long-term effects of parentification. In all the research I've done, I found that parentification absolutely lasts until adulthood or throughout adulthood. Everybody knows that adverse childhood experiences, especially if you look up the ACEs and do an ACE score, increases the likelihood of mental and physical health problems throughout one's lifetime. This is so scary because the ongoing stress that parentification will cause for a child actually damages their brain. What happens is the ongoing stressful experience changes the brain, shrinking the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain that regulates memory, emotion, and stress management. So part of their brain, the hippocampus, literally shrinks, atrophies, because of the chronic stress these children are under. There is a researcher, Dr. Lisa Hooper, who has done some amazing research on parentification. Her and her colleagues have actually come up with a parentification scale, and you can find out where you or your friend or your sibling or your loved one is on the parentification scale using the parentification inventory. So there's a list of statements, and you respond by choosing a number 1 through 5. 1 means this is never true for me, and 5 means it's always true for me, to describe one's experience. Parents can ask their children to answer yes or no to the following questions, or you yourself, if you have been through parentification, you can answer these questions yourself, 1 through 5. I'm going to read these off because I think some people might find it helpful. It might be helpful to get a pen and paper and just quickly jot down these numbers as I write out the statements. Let's start. It seems like family members are always bringing me their problems. In my family, I often feel called upon to do more than my share. I often feel more like an adult than a child in my family. I often feel like a referee. I often make sacrifices that go unnoticed by other family members. At times, I feel I am the only one my mother or father can turn to. I often find myself feeling down for no particular reason that I can think of. In my family, there are certain family members I can handle better than anyone else. I am very active in the management of my family's financial affairs. My parents have enough to do without worrying about housework as well. I am very uncomfortable when things aren't going well at home. It often seems that my families aren't taken into account in my family. I initiate most free time activities. I am at my best in times of crisis. It seems like there are enough problems at home without me causing more. If one of my family members is upset, I almost always become involved in some way. I often resent being asked to do certain kinds of jobs. I often prefer the company of people older than me. I am frequently responsible for the physical care of some members of my family. I am often described as mature for my age. It seems that I am usually the one held responsible for most of what happens. If you can relate to these descriptors now or during your childhood, it's quite possible that you have experienced parentification. About parentification and alienation, I'll just give you my personal opinion. When your alienator makes you, the child, feel responsible for not only their emotional well-being, but sometimes their physical well-being. You're constantly worried about how they're doing, if they're okay, what they need you to do for them. The list goes on. You become so aware of how they're feeling at all times. It creates an environment where you're walking on eggshells. This goes back to the chronic stress, which was mentioned before, and how that actually shrinks the part of your brain, the hippocampus, that's responsible for memory and emotional regulation. There's something else too. The alienated child is in this really dysfunctional position where they believe that their alienator needs them in order to be okay. They believe their alienator needs them in order to manage their emotions, in order to be happy, in order to be all right in the world. There's a sense as an alienated child that your alienator, because of parentification too, will not survive without you. And because you love your parent, this causes a situation where you're trapped. If you take it a step further, because of that aspect of parentification, to make any move to get closer to your targeted parent or to make any attempts to see or spend time with your targeted parent, you know that's going to cause emotional turbulence in your alienator that you're going to have to take care of, that you're going to have to help them through. And it's a double whammy because you will be causing it by reaching out to your targeted parent. So because of the parentification, that alienated child is chronically aware of how their words, actions, and decisions are going to impact their alienator and their emotional landscape. What happens in parentification is that the parentified child has to naturally put their own needs second to their parent. And in doing so, they have to put their parent and their parents' needs first all the time. When this relates to alienation, the child in needing to put their parents' needs first all the time means naturally they need to remain distant, or they need to keep rejecting the targeted parent because that's what their parent needs. And the child becomes so accustomed to neglecting their own wants and needs and accustomed to muting their own voice that they end up just being controlled by their parent. They end up giving up all control in order to care for their parent. And that's what their parent demands of them. And especially when you're a younger kid and you don't really know better, this can seem normal because you don't know better. And you don't have the knowledge or the perspective to realize that, in fact, everything is backwards. There's this overwhelming feeling that kids who've been parentified have, and that's that their parents not going to be okay without them. And I've been there too. I've actually worried like maybe they won't survive without me, because that has been enforced for years, again and again and again. And so that just causes one more trap for the child to stay in this false reality. That's all for this video. I hope you guys learned something or had some type of insight about parentification and alienation. By the way, I got my t-shirt. I got extra large because I like my shirts pretty big. How to legally steal a child. Parental alienation. I really love this shirt. It's super comfy. If you're interested in buying any shirts, the link will be in the video description. Leave in the comments below, is this going on with your child? Do you suspect that they've been parentified? If you've been through this from the child's point of view, did you experience parentification? What have been the long-term effects on your life? As always, if you like what I'm doing here, please subscribe. I also have a donor box that I'll be leaving in the bio as well. A lot of people have come up to me with wondering how they can support my project. And the next thing I want to start doing is putting together campaigns for college campuses. We're a one-income family. I'm a stay-at-home mom, so I need to raise some money to be able to put these campaigns together. So if you're interested in helping out in that way or any other way, I've created a donor box which you can use if you feel called to do so. Thank you everybody for being here, for supporting what I'm doing. It means so much to me. You can do anything with your time, and it means so much to me that you support my project and have watched and listened to my message. I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.